Chapter 5, Gone with the Whales. Chapter 5, Clouds Parting. It must have been the next day, while I was still dreaming in my bunk from the hashish. I filched an egg-sized bottle of it.
Sorry.
It's okay. Our raptor found lambs. Lambs of God, it turned out. In a steady light snow, winds southerly and gentle, we crept up silently on two Yankee whalers. For your information, this takes place in Prince William Sound, Alaska. They were moored on sea anchors in deep water in Prince William Sound. I hate sea anchors. Even a dead whale is better. This was to avoid storms and aleuts. We were way too close to land and people for safety. But who cared about those few Ruskies? They didn't give no shit for us. Listen to me identifying with a pirate rebel ship. Anyway, they had no guns except at Sitka and faraway Fort Ross. The Russians, that is. This was just before Seward's Folly. It was like the Russians had put a tourniquet on all of Alaska. It was useless to the Tsar. They had killed all the sea otters and giant sea cows and great auks, and anything else, even masts, cost too much to ship to Petersburg. There was no gold yet. The scene was still and white like a Christmas card. I think it was mid-November. The snow on the two ships indeed made them resemble sheep. Even the sea joined in a very light chop. Patches of white kept forming as the reluctant snow spent a few seconds of white ecstasy, dancing before being absorbed into the blue immensity. Closer we came. On the air lilted a song. Soon we could make it out. Nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee. It's a fucking Baptist convention, cracked the first mate. No one else broke the spell, but voices were heard from our crew singing. We slid neatly in between the two, where he could keep an eye on both like a black 16-eyed spider. It sounded to us like a Thanksgiving service. If so, it was rather early in more ways than one. Death was always near, for whalers and rebels too. We showed no guns yet, no name, no flag. The captain said, "Let's not give him a heart attack, though it's cheaper than bullets." But nobody laughed, and I could tell his heart was not in the joke. He had lost perhaps more than the Marina's bow. The singing came from the Brilliant of New Bedford. Her sister ship was the Vesta of the same port. They were as alike as two peas in a pod, or two white pearls. Both were loaded down about halfway, no doubt with neatly stowed barrels of northern right whale oil. Plentiful and sweet, but not as valuable as sperm oil or spermaceti. No ambergris. Better than humpbacks, though. Lots of incredible 8-foot baleen strips, though, for whips, umbrella ribs, and corset stays. Stupid things, except the umbrellas. Later, we used baleen to patch the hull. Well, live and learn. After the service, two identical longboats hurried from the Brilliant with the two captains. They hadn't been attacked, they knew. They had no defenses anyway, so were probably not in danger. But our fat hulk was way too close, almost fouling the sea anchor lines. The sea anchors were a bit like umbrellas in the water, clumsy, unsafe, but better than no anchor at all in a blow. Blackbeard welcomed the two captains with a mock courtly bow and doffed hat. turning his black head briefly snowy white as the snow continued to fall. The scared captains, who might have been brothers, they were, as it turned out, they ducked into his cabin and the three talked a while, not long. We heard no glasses clinking. Soon they went off and Captain McNaughton came out, actually straightening his jacket. "What's wrong with him?" said the first mate to the boatswain. The captain offered all and sundry a tot of grog in honor of Thanksgiving. "Drink up, boys," he said. "There's 4 Presbyterian black-robed damn preachers on the Brilliant. We have to drink more because those 4 teetotalers have caused a vacuum which displeases the Lord in this vicinity." With cheers, bottles were uncorked. "I told him," said our mule of a captain, "how as they are now our prisoners. Wasn't that easy?" Of course, absolutely no one cared. No one cared because in that godforsaken place, even a rebel pirate might need help. We could see the 2 crews surly in the snow, resetting the sea anchors with buoyed lines and putting distance between us, but not more than a cannon shot. And I told you about our surprise parrot guns, the best. Our own finned anchor on our 2 longest chains reached the bottom. But that was dangerous too. If a wind came up, we would swing and the whalers would slide and boom. McNaughton went on a victory tour of his prizes, starting with Vesta. The first mate, named Claghorn, as we soon learned, liked to talk. He had been on the Essex, that famous ship, which Melville noted, that was stove in and sunk by an angry bull sperm whale. On hearing this, the tipsy Blackbeard began butting the masts and rails, and people making wee-oo noises and spitting tobacco juice upward. Vesta's captain was James Smith. His brother on Brilliant was John Smith. Really, they were. I'm tired of making up names. One wag on Vesta, who had actually read something, unlike the rebels, had read the brand new Alice in Wonderland and called them Tweedledum and Tweedledee. D was James, the younger by 2 hours. A mild, bland man, tough but not stubborn, practical, level, and inclined to be easygoing when the captain's duties permitted it. A likable man. Did that matter to McNaughton? Well, perhaps it did. In spite of bravado and hijinks, he was changing hourly, growing serious, gathering himself, perhaps. During the bitter night, an idea came to me. Next day, as we, the captain, Kath, me, Lolo, and 3 mates, were on deck, shivering and muffled in the bitter wind, checking the weather, I said, "Well, Captain, I'm a landlubber and a Yankee, but if you'll listen, I might could warm your tootsies." "Fire away," says he. "Well, listen, Captain. Whale oil burns, right?" His mouth went into an O. "You mean, but whale oil stinks." "And," I said, "your naval engineers can rig up a bellows and vent system." He got it as fast as I could say it. "Steam would get us south, quickly and slyly." "To what?" But for the others present, I went on. I didn't know if this would work. "You have 2 coal boilers, port and starboard, right?" "Right." "Can you run on one?" "Thought of that. Yes, our screw is permanently fixed, invisible underwater, and we can drive her by gears from left to right or both. That way, if one side gets hit, we can get away." "Good. We can risk one side on my idea. Clean the clinkers out of the firebox and install a big tub. Bigger the better, so it won't burn the side. Fill it with whale oil and burn it." "Impossible. How will we feed in blubber?" "Sorry, but just think about this. Blubber is useless here. We need a wick that will burn slow and even. Every house in Honolulu has whale oil lamps. Of course, that's refined for sperm oil. But we can stand the stink. With a good wick, we can get it started with hand bellows and a vent, or else we'd surely choke. And then when the steam comes up and the beam starts walking, we can slip a belt over a crank and work the bellows. And then we can take it easy, burn the last coal in the cabin stove. But what about the heat in the firebox? How do we feed the tub? Can't shovel oil. Blubber maybe? Throw it? You've heard of siphons. Got any fire hose? Yes, Yankee, it might work. Wicks will be the problem, I said. They may clog, and changing them will be hard. But if this works, you can clean one and run on the other. I felt brilliant at that point. Hell, I'd thought about it all night. I love hashish and hate coal. Oilers with a turbine wheel weren't known then. No Rockefeller rock oil yet. Engineers would have laughed at me. If anyone had tried my idea, I hadn't heard of it. So we made the first oiler for the Confederate Navy, which didn't exist anymore. The crew sprang to it with gusto. Some of them actually were good engineers. We had two from the CSN Virginia. Long drinking and despair had dulled their edges, but this was fun. The wicking required ingenuity. We put pieces of scrap metal, wash tubs, a small anchor, and some ballast stones in the big tub. The tub was hand-built of teak by our Chinese carpenter. I forgot to tell you there was one more brown skin aboard. The old Chinese man was afraid of everyone, but he was good. We draped pieces of broken anchor chain over them and then made wicking braids and draped them over it all. Then we filled the tub. The first wicking we used was wool. Silk wouldn't do it, to the girls' vast relief. We had lots of whalers, good New England peacoats and such, so we started cutting and braiding and splicing. Now to try it. We had a vent to the smokestack. We lighted the oil and quickly manned the bellows manfully. Smoke choked us. The wick some places was too high and others too low. When we burned our fingers fixing the wick, we relit it and it worked. Shutting the firebox door would put it out. We got up steam. The bellows started working off the crank. Hooray for us! After a half hour, smoke got blacker and thicker, stink of hair was smelt, and steam power went out. We found the wick a solid mass. No more wool. But Southern uniforms are made of cotton, like the wicks in Honolulu. So we started cutting up butternut dyed uniforms. The second mate Sanger, that wag, suggested using the cotton wadding for the guns. This was met with a storm of outcry, rebel yells, and hell no! The captain roared, "You want me to surrender to the Yankees unarmed?" Bob Lee wouldn't. The three Graces wouldn't touch the uniforms or anything belonging to a dead person if they knew about it, except Jules. This was probably wise. Too bad we didn't have slaves' clothing to burn. It was always durable and local hemp. Would have outlasted cotton 3-1. They sold cotton and kept hemp. Kentucky, mostly. Made good ropes and sails. The three cannibals glared at the captain as they cut cloth. One put some in his mouth, bugged his eyes out, and chewed loudly on it as the others cracked up. Some sailors really weren't ready for this. They were cold, yes, but the uniform meant so much. The cause, the great cause. Still, they did it. And this time it worked like a charm, a Dixie chime. The captain said, "Ship shape. We'll have all the evidence burned before the Kearsarge finds us." His mood had improved greatly. Kath and I, with hashish, totted up. Each new wick would consume the souls, that is, the uniforms, of 5 sailors, times 2 for 2 boilers. "Subtract God's mercy, infidel!" cried Kathy as she and I pretended to fight over the absurdly long hashish pipe. Anyway, we figured that we had about 5 changes of wick to get to Honolulu or San Francisco before we froze. We had plenty of stolen oil, stolen whale oil. Kathy and I were already hoping to leave the ship soon. She and I needed some horseplay and more. I told you privacy was impossible in the icy weather on deck. I was starting to worry that we were growing apart. But moments like this showed us both otherwise. We each had important roles to play. She with the young Vahinis, me joking with the crew and learning like a sponge. Both of us taking turns, consoling the captain. Yes, consoling. Catherine was amazing and loving. Her identity was still thinly disguised, but he knew. Hull's not the worst, he said. Her talking ships with the captain were his finest moments. We two, she and I, were like two geese migrating side by side, in tandem, but not looking away from the goal. She the white leader, I the gray follower. Tweedledum and Tweedledee. We just honked at one another frequently, but we were still on the same course, wherever the next tack would take us. This might be a good time to introduce myself properly. Good hashish today. I'm Jack, but you can call me Ishmael. Ha 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 ha. You know that is the first line from Herman Melville's famous book. I am John McGonagall McGacken in the flesh, known as Jack Crack, because I slipped through so many cracks. But the crack of death I shall not slip through. But wait, maybe Gordon can save me. Perhaps he already has. You see, there's this other character, Robert Calvin Gordon III. Princeton 67. Arrogant bastard. Lousy sailor. No horseman. Who claims he invented me? Of course, I do hereby declare that I invented this Robert or Robbie out of whole cloth to serve my evil purposes. However, he claims to have invented me, though I am before him. At the same time, he claims I don't exist. His granny told of her granny, but there was no absconding brother. But I left at night, disgraced, a black sheep to my family. A prodigal? Like you, Robbie? So take that, Robert. I could exist. Confused yet? Have another puff of this excellent black Nepali. Here, take your time. This is my book. Yours too, Catherine. How did we get this stuff? Nepal has no ships. Well, I've seen a lot in my 64 years. In this newfangled year of 1905, with Teddy Roosevelt in the saddle of the U.S. Steady, boy, settle down. Whee! Robbie's two grandfathers, Gordon and Reed, have recently graduated from Princeton. Best friends in the class of '02, both still unmarried. The McGackies are certainly intermarried with the Davisons and the Gordons. Granny was Mary Jean Davison Gordon. And the Davisons have that strange double cousin marriage with the Dietrichs. And the Howes, Julia Ward Howe and her family come into it too on Robert Gordon's mother's side. But I'm boring you now. So what's the point? Why read on? Well, just please bear with me, readers. I'll try to take you on a good Nantucket sleigh ride to pass your idle hours between life and death, between war and peace. What's your hurry? Turn off the internet and cozy up, 2013. Now back to our story. I swear to you, as their author, these characters are taking me somewhere. Thanksgiving 2013 and 6 inches of snow. Dot, dot, dot. Well, the captain was in no mood to go anywhere, except he started visiting the Brilliant almost daily, quite openly, to meet the missionaries and actually attend prayer services. Of course, Kath and I, almost parentally, flanked him closely on these excursions through hostile crew. Believe it or not, some anonymous spittle actually landed just before his toes once. On his own deck, a pause and a look around that would have croaked a basilisk. Then he swept on. No cannibals in sight, just Texans. He had a huge bass voice, and to our amazement, though out of practice, he was loving to sing hymns. The boys on deck, our deck, were jealous and got him to sing on our vessel. But the Bonnie Blue Flag just didn't sound the same. Dixie sounded even worse. Even with the squeeze box concertina of the second mate, I was shy about those songs. However, I got out the ukulele. I wished for a guitar, and I did way down upon the Swanee River to almost reverent approval. Then, beautiful dreamer, hard times come again no more. I dream of Jeannie, all Stephen Foster's. Lorena, I had to sing, but I only did one verse. I choked up. The second mate sang her now was most tunefully sympathetic, with tenor and chords, with our mood. The captain did not conceal his agony. Arlie, Annie Laurie, Lockmond. Real slow, that one. My singing can lead, I did. High or low. Then the one to remember, the one we all knew. The one that meant so much to a lonely, repentant, tainted slave ship owner. Amazing grace. Maybe you better pause it. There's too much noise over there.
Okay, because I got
Let's take a little break.
Okay.